Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Kaufman. Welcome to our 211th installment in the Torah portion of the week. We are holding by Parshas Terumah. Parshas Terumah talks about the building of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, talks about the ark, talks about the cover, talks about the table, talks about the menorah, covers of the tabernacle. Let's talk about the building of the tabernacle. But the Torah tells me, chapter 26, verse 15, the Torah tells me you shall make the planks of the tabernacle of acacia wood standing erect. Right? So the Torah here says that when you're going to build the tabernacle over here, right, you're going to make the beams, so to speak, right, of the Mishkan, or the tabernacle as it's known. You're going to take the beams, and what are you going to make them of? Of this acacia wood. Right? What we call atzei shitim. So Rashi explains that where the wood come from. Right? Last time we checked, there's no wood. There's no wood in the desert. Right? Where are they going to find wood from? So it says Yaakov planted cedar trees in Egypt. And when he died, he commanded his sons to bring these cedar trees when they left Egypt. Right? Because he saw the future. Right? He saw there's going to be a Mishkan. There's going to be a tabernacle. Right? So he told his sons, take these trees out after I die. So says the Medrash. There's a Medrash as well that says that Avram Avinu also planted cedar trees. Right? Also planted cedar trees when he's in Beersheba. Yaakov himself also when he was in Beersheba. Right? And they uprooted them and sent them to Egypt. Right? And then Yaakov commands his sons and says, after I die, take them out. Because there's going to be a Mishkan. You're going to build a tabernacle and all that. So take the trees and use the wood from the trees for that. So says Mori V'Rebbe, Harav Agon Moshe Star Machlit, this should be well, brings down in Chochmah V'Das, in his commentary on Chumash, and he says that the patriarchs did not want to give the nations of the world a part in building the Mishkan. Right? Essentially, all the materials, all the building, and all that, who's going to do all the work? And who's going to get all the materials? The Jews. Right? He didn't want any non-Jews having to take over here. So Moshe Rabbeinu is going to take these cedar trees from Egypt, and maybe you'll tell me that in Egypt, maybe the Egyptians planted them. So if the Egyptians planted them, then they're going to be the ones, they're going to get merit, because the fact that they planted them, and the Jews are going to use the wood for the Mishkan, so they're going to get credit over here. Right? So comes along Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov says, no, it wasn't the Egyptians. Right? I'm the one who planted it there. Right? And I want to make sure that it gets taken out. When the Jews go out of Egypt, it should be taken out. And the reason is because we want these things that are going to be made for the Mishkan. These things are going to be made for the tabernacle, God's place. Because the Torah tells me, Book of Exodus chapter 25 verse 8. Right? What does the Torah tell me? God is going to dwell amongst us. We're going to put God in a box, so to speak, whatever that means. God's going to come down, right, from the heavenly world and come down and put himself in a box. Very hard to explain, right, unless we understand Kabbalah very well. But regardless, you're making a building for God over here. If you're making a building for God, then everything done has to be done for the sake of heaven. It's got to be done with tremendous holiness. So we're not going to allow non-Jews. No offense to any non-Jews listening. Right? We're not going to allow non-Jews to partake. It all has to be done through Jews. Comes on the Vilna Gaon, of blessed memory. The Vilna Gaon says, he brings down from a Gemara in Bab Metzia, 85b, anyone who wants to look it up. Rabbi Chia himself planted flax, and then he tied it, he made it into nets, and he trapped a tzvi, a deer, and he did different things, as it says over there. Right, exactly what he did with everything. And the Rebbe said, sounds like a wonder. What's Rabbi Chia doing? Right, what in the world is he doing? He's taking the flax, he's making nets, and trapping this deer. What's he running around doing all these things? Because he wanted to teach Jewish children. Right, so the scrolls and all that were going to be made through absolute holiness. So you see that he did all these things to make the scrolls. All right, to make the parchment where the Torah is going to be written on for these children to learn. It should be done in a way that's going to be the utmost holiness. So what does Reb Chia do? Reb Chia does it himself. Doesn't take any helpers. Does it himself. To put all the holiness, all the Kedusha in over here to make these books, so to speak, scrolls, in order to be able to teach Torah to children. So what's the problem? Why didn't he have helpers? Right? Rabbi Chia couldn't have been that young. Right? Why didn't he have helpers over here? Could have invested more time in learning. But see, what goes into the action? What goes into the action is my intention. Right? Is a person's intention. So he didn't want anyone who's going to have any negative intention at all in this project. Because if there's any negative spiritual intention, that means that the project could fail. Could absolutely fail. So you want to have the purest of intention. So he couldn't trust anybody else, so he did it himself. But you see, there's another question here. You see by the Beis HaMikdash, you see by the temple itself, that there were tens of thousands of non-Jews in the time of King Solomon, as it says in the book of Kings. So what's the difference? Over there, King Solomon had tens of thousands of people, non-Jews helping him. Why building the Mishkan? It's only Jews. Right? It should only be done by God-fearing Jews. So, everyone wants to answer only by the Mishkan, only by the tabernacle where the holiness was supposed to be forever. Right? That holiness was never supposed to be destroyed. So therefore it had to be done at the highest level. Right? Can't rely on anyone else. So therefore, you only had God-fearing people doing it. And that's different. That's different than the Beis HaMikdash. Because really, the Mishkan itself was a harbinger of the Beis HaMikdash. Right? Because after they stopped using the Mishkan, they built the Beis HaMikdash. Nonetheless, Beis HaMikdash, the temple itself, in the end, it's going to get destroyed. God knew that it would get destroyed. So the Beis HaMikdash itself can be constructed by non-Jews. Right? That's not a contradiction. The Mishkan was never going to be destroyed. So the Mishkan's never going to be destroyed. You have to have people with the highest intention over here. Right? At the highest level building it. Now we know that the Aron, the ark was hidden forever right? It was hidden after the destruction of the temple, or the impending destruction. And the ark itself, what's the issue with the ark? It has unbelievable holiness. Right? Unbelievable holiness. Not something that should be messed with ordinary people. And if someone who carried the ark in the desert wasn't fitting to carry the ark, they died. That's how potent it was. Right? That's how great the holiness was. So then my Rebbe brings down from his Rebbe, from Ramosha Schneider, of blessed memory. Ramosha Schneider was very careful. Now, this is going to be an extension. An extension of what we learned over here. Because what do we say? That when you have unbelievable holiness, you do not want non-Jews being involved. Or even secular Jews. Right? They should not have a part in it because of their bad intention. Because they don't normally have good intention. They don't know what it means to think in Torah. They don't know what it means to lead a Torah life. So, if you need something that needs a high level of holiness, they're not the ones to take. So, Ramosha Schneider was very careful at the yeshiva. Ramosha Schneider was very careful never to accept money for the building of Torah from people who desecrate Shabbos. And even though the yeshiva many times was in dire straits, was in real dire straits, and it would have behooven him to take from non-religious Jews that didn't keep Shabbos, still he didn't. Because in the end, there's going to be a very serious price to pay. Why? Where does the money go? Where does the money go for a yeshiva? Goes to paying the teachers, right? The upkeep of the yeshiva, food, all these things. But you see, if some of the money is tainted, if money is coming from someone who doesn't keep Shabbos, you're not going to see any blessing from it. That money is tainted. And tainted money can cause a blemish in anything holy. It comes along Ramosha Schneider. And Ramosha Schneider said, no, I don't care. Even if the yeshiva is in dire straits, I'm not going to take money from people that desecrate Shabbos, because it's going to destroy the integrity of the yeshiva. It's going to destroy really the holiness of the yeshiva. Why? Because that treif money is going to seep into the wall spiritually. Have a negative effect over here. Right? It could have a negative effect where the students are not going to get, in spiritual terms, what they need. Now that boggles the mind. Because if you have no food, students can't learn. Right? You have no money, you have no yeshiva. On the other hand, you can say, well, if they give charity over here, it gives them a merit. Maybe there won't be Machal Shabbos later. Maybe it'll have a positive effect on them. So why not allow it? And there are institutions that will take money from non-religious Jews that desecrate Shabbos as a merit for them. Right? It can be a tremendous merit as well. But Ramosha Schneider said no. Ramosha Schneider did not want to have any spiritual effect that God forbid could possibly affect the yeshiva in a negative way. So he said there was a time in the yeshiva where they didn't have bread. They're talking, World War II. They were desperate times. And nonetheless, he had non-religious Jews desecrated Shabbos willing to help. And he refused. And he didn't accept bread from a Jewish baker desecrated Shabbos. Right, famous story. Ramon Schneider went to a Shomer Shabbos bakery, and the agreement was any leftover bread that didn't sell, they would give to the yeshiva. And that's what they did. Rather than take money from non-religious Jews, right? It boggles the mind. Because you would think the yeshiva is starving. There's no money, the yeshiva can't stand. If the yeshiva can't stand, then what's the point? Right? What in the world is going to be the point over here? And interesting enough, right, what happened to the yeshiva? The yeshiva survived, and the yeshiva had tremendous hatzlacha. Right, they had tremendous success. Because a lot of people who went to that yeshiva became tzaddikim, became Torah giants to the next generation, my Rebbe included. So the rule of thumb is, again, not everyone agrees with this, but the rule of thumb for Moshe Schneider was that taking money from evil people that desecrate Shabbos will have a negative effect on the yeshiva itself. It'll seep into the walls. Right? And the end result will be that the yeshiva won't be successful. Students won't be successful. Because in spiritual terms, they're getting tainted. They're certainly getting tempted. They're tainted over here. You're going to say, I don't see the effect. How's someone donating money? How's it have an effect on the guy's learning? Why in the world should it have any effect? Even a negative effect. And the answer is, in spiritual terms, it has an effect. It has a tremendously negative effect. So again, not everyone agrees with this. And it takes a lot of self-discipline. Tremendous amount of self-discipline. Because no food. A yeshiva that doesn't have money, doesn't have food, students can't learn. Very hard for students to learn. Yeah, you can tighten the belt a little bit. But you want the students to be successful. You want the teachers to be happy. Not just what they do, but yeah, they're getting paid. Running yeshiva is tremendous self-sacrifice. Because no matter how much money you put in, you're always looking for more. But look what you're producing. Hopefully. You're producing the next generation. Next generation of would-be of Talmidei Chachamim, of rabbinic scholars. The heads of the yeshiva have to go from place to place, raising the money. Right? It's certainly not an easy thing to do, even the best of times. But you may say, well, isn't this a stumbling block? Doesn't this make it even harder? Because you won't take money from people that potentially could help? And the answer is, at what price? What price spiritually are you willing to pay? The famous story with Elisha ben Abuya, or known as Acher. The other one, who's a member of the Sanhedrin, and it went off. The Talmud says that when his father held the baby, when Elisha ben Abuya was a baby at the bris, at the circumcision, his negative thoughts affected him. Right, he had intention, he wanted his son to be a great rabbinic scholar. But it wasn't just about Torah. Right, it was about standing and the power of Torah. Right, because he saw people, he saw the rabbis come before the bris, they were learning. And they were learning there was a circle of fire surrounding them. Elisha ben Abuya's father said, what, you here to burn down my house? Burn down the whole place? So no, there's the power of Torah. And that's what he wanted for his son. That was his intention when he sat and he held the baby when the circumcision was done. That had a negative effect. That's exactly what the Talmud says. Had an unbelievable negative effect. But you're going to say, well, I care what he thinks. Does his thinking there really have an effect? He didn't verbalize it at the time. Might have said it, but he didn't verbalize it then. It's like putting pure poison into the child. And that's why a non-religious Jew should not be sandik, should not hold the baby at a bris. Because of negative thoughts that they have, whatever they're thinking, could be poison for the child. Science ever proven this telepathy has any effect? We don't care, right? Doesn't matter what science says. It's irrelevant what science says over here. Doesn't mean it's not true. Plenty of things science hasn't proven. But what do we believe? We believe that our thoughts can have effect, even if it's not verbalized. Actions can have an effect. But here it's one step removed. They did a great job, it's okay. They have this money. You say, okay, it's a direct effect from Shabbos. You're not allowed to get benefit from it. True. But even so, right, the person's not allowed to get benefit from it, but what if he wants to give it to charity? Shouldn't charity be allowed to take it? You're not the one who does great Shabbos. Not only that, you got a tremendous need over here. Right? Tremendous need. No money. No food. No yeshiva. And even Rabbi Schneider thought maybe find a way this way, that way. He didn't buckle. He didn't buckle. And taking on such a task it's a big thing. You know, imagine today, budgets are even more. Not that there's not enough Jewish money, it's plenty of Jewish money. It's a question of getting it out. But this is the whole thing over here. Do you take money from somebody that got it in a legal way? Rabbi Chanan, Shem Yikam Damoy, God should avenge his blood. Famous student of the Chofetz Chaim, head of the Yeshiva Baranovich, was in America during the war, collecting money. And people wanted to donate, and a bunch of people wanted to donate play cards. Right, they like to play cards. Rabbi Chanan refused to take the money. And they laughed at him. It's like everybody's doing this. You think you're going to find real kosher money in America? Right? Rabbi Chanan trudged on. Made whatever money he made. And unfortunately, went back to Europe and he was killed. But he also refused to take money that wasn't kosher. Because money that's not kosher has an effect. It has a negative effect. And that negative effect is not worth anything when it comes to spirituality. Because it can only harm. It can only be a negative effect. Yeah, you tell me you could strengthen the person giving charity. Could have a positive effect on the person giving charity. That's true. That is 100% true. But in the end, does it have to be at my expense for the sake of spirituality? For the sake of whatever institution or whatever thing you need money for? Because unkosher money will have an unkosher effect. Money cannot buy spirituality. And especially if the money's been achieved in a quote-unquote unorthodox way. Where's the blessing? Why would there be blessing for something like that? But you say, what are we going to do? It can tremendously help. Save time, people trying to raise money. True. But there's one caveat. And the one caveat is there are going to be repercussions. There are going to be spiritual repercussions. And for many people, those spiritual repercussions 100% not worth it. It will not be worth it. And Moshe Schneider did not cave in. And in the end, his yeshiva was very successful. As we mentioned, many rabbinic scholars came out of there. He didn't compromise. He didn't water down. He didn't rely on things he didn't want to rely on. And in this case, we could have justified it easily. Could have justified it because they had no money. They were struggling tremendously. Comes along Moshe Schneider and says, let us struggle. But every penny we put together is going to be kosher money. And that kosher money is going to build the yeshiva. It's going to make the walls of the yeshiva strong. Spiritually. And that's what's going to have the positive effects on the yeshiva itself. Certainly on the students. And certainly on anyone that's associated with it. So I want to remind everyone I have class on Duties of the Heart every Tuesday, 9 o'clock New York time. I have 2 Q&As every Tuesday, Thursday, 10 o'clock New York time, 5 o'clock Israel time. I also have a class on the Book of Leviticus every Sunday, 9 o'clock New York time, 4 o'clock Israel time. I do Tanakh Talk every week, usually. Monday, 2 o'clock Eastern time, 9 o'clock Israel time. Perkei Avos, Ethics of Our Fathers, every Saturday, 2 o'clock Eastern time, 9 o'clock Israel time. I also have conversion classes. Anyone interested in any of these things, find me on Facebook, Beyond Orthodox Conversion and Judaism. Send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com.